Ashley Gilbertson, thanks for coming to Chicago to speak with us about your new book, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, a photographer's Chronicle of the Iraq War. By the time of the American invasion of Iraq, you were already in the northern part of the country. How did you come to be there?
I had been working for about 4 or 5 years on issues of refugees and displacement around the world, and that path naturally led me to northern Iraq, into Kurdistan, where at some point all of the people up there have been refugees, most recently in 1991. So I was there in 2002, and I went back in 2003 to actually see what sort of deal was struck with the Kurds this time. I mean, they were treated incredibly badly in 1991, and I wanted to try to bear witness to what actually took place this time. And upon arriving, I realized pretty quickly that there was a bigger story taking place than just what was happening up north.
Did you know when you arrived that the Americans were coming?
Yeah, I mean, Powell hadn't gone to the UN at this point, except it was pretty clear. There were special forces operating throughout the region.
Now, you were 23 years old at the time, is that right? And had photographed refugees, but had not thought of yourself as a war photographer, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. At that point in 2003, I had no intention and no interest in covering, war, people shooting at one another. I really didn't feel like it was my business, and it wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to explore. My business was to look at the civilians that were caught in the middle, to look at the refugees, and I felt that there were other photographers that could, very adequately cover the hostilities. But I think I covered issues around war for so long that then when the invasion actually did take place, I realized that I needed to try to understand why these men were shooting at each other and what that meant and what sort of feelings went with that. And I wanted to look at the root cause of why these, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are displaced in every single conflict that takes place around the world.
You say in your book that your attitude to the invasion changed 180 degrees within a fairly short time. How so?
Well, having worked in Iraq in 2002 and 2003, and exclusively with the Kurds, and hearing these horrible stories of what Saddam did to those people. I mean, the gas attacks in Halabja, the continued incursions up over the Green Line, and these downtrodden people. I felt any way to get Saddam out of power was a good way. I didn't care who came in or why they came in or what pretense they had. I mean, I felt like back then the weapons of mass destruction argument, I mean, fine, if that's what they can all agree on, like, get Saddam out of power. That's all I cared about. But after the invasion actually took place, and we drove into Mosul one day, this is a cameraman and I, Mosul had weathered the invasion perfectly well, but it was the looting that actually destroyed the city. The entire city was on fire. There were just lines and lines of people looting palaces, looting UN warehouses. I mean, and it was then that you had, American soldiers and special forces driving by these banks and palaces that are being looted and destroyed by the Iraqis and not responding to it. And then the administration pipes up with stuff happens. I realized then, watching this absolute, depravity, that there was no plan. Had there been a plan, they would have stopped it. And that's when I turned around and thought I was wrong. I still felt there was hope at that point, but I felt like I was wrong. That's when I turned.